Is A Quiet Place Day One a day one watch? Let's talk about it now. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watch Your Pass. I'm here to talk to you about A Quiet Place Day One, the prequel to everyone's favorite horror movie, A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part Two. This is the prequel. This shows what happened when the Death Angels, listeners, I like to call them clickers, whatever, aliens came down and overran the earth. This shows what happened from the ground in New York. Is this prequel worth watching? Well, my hot take is I think you should watch it. It is a really good prequel with kind of a lot of the same elements that made the first one so good. It's got an amazing use of sound, great effects, a ton of tension. The story is a little weaker in this one. It kind of doesn't make a ton of sense, but they are bound by what happened in A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2. So you get some leeway there. Overall, it is a good movie experience. It is a good experience to see in theaters. The amazing sound is really impressive. The kind of effects are really great to see. So I think you should watch it. Just realize it's not as strong as like the first two movies. So all that being said, I'm going to tell you a little about the film, a few things I like, a few things I didn't like, really quickly go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there'll be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't know what happens in this movie, and you might not, there are some surprises along the way. I would turn off when they get to the ending. Before that, though, I'll keep it vague. I'll keep it spoiler-free. Let's try to get to those spoilers. So, like I said, A Quiet Place Day One is the prequel to the Quiet Place movies. This movie follows Sammy, who is in a hospice care home that is going into the city for a fun excursion. That excursion turns from fun to horrible when all these meteors start falling from the sky. And wouldn't you know it, after that, all chaos breaks loose. Does Sammy survive? Does anyone else survive? And how loud can she get? Well, you have to watch the movie to find out. So, things I liked about this movie. The first, the sound. It's a Quiet Place movie. The sound is going to be phenomenal, and this is no different. You have like the insane like cacophony, I think, of the city of New York City. Just the amount of sound at the start, kind of contrasted with the very little amount of sound that happens after these death angels fall from the sky and after they kind of like start devastating the city. It is a really nice contrast. The use of sound is fantastic. Like once it gets very quiet, it is very noticeable. And then you see like when a new sound happens, it sounds larger than life. It's pretty crazy. So again, sound is like the main way that these things interact, and it is really, really good. The second thing I love the effects. You've got some really great effects, a lot of really good destruction effects. There is definitely some CG. You can't make this film without CG, but there are some effects that are really good, especially like the original day destruction effects where there's like dust everywhere and it's like your visibility is tough to see, and Sammy's character is just like covered in dust and debris from all the craziness that's happening. It really draws you in. It really kind of gets you invested at the start. The third thing I love the tension. Again, it is a kind of a hallmark of this series, and this is no different. You have some scenes where you are wondering if these things are going to hear what is going on, and you are holding your breath as you're waiting to see, if someone makes a sound, if someone makes a wrong move. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You just have to see to find out. The fourth thing I love the music. There's not a lot of it, but especially towards the end, you've got some really beautiful music to kind of like accompany things that are happening in the movie. And I liked it. It was a nice, like, look, the sound is such an important part of this. It's good that the music is also really good. And the last thing I loved, there's a cat. There's a cat that makes an appearance several times in the movie. It is a very, very fun cat. It is a kind of a key character in this movie. And hey, what can I say? I like animals. I love that there's a cat that is central in this film. So, things I didn't love as much about this movie. The first, I'm gonna call it Sammy. Sammy, the main character. I didn't really like her that much. She wasn't super sympathetic to me. She wasn't super interesting to me. I did not love her as much as I was expecting to. She's fine, and look, and that is not a fault of Lupita Nyong'o. She does a really good job in this movie. I just didn't like Sammy's character overall. The second thing I didn't love, related kind of, the quest, like the overall quest that the characters are doing in this movie, seems silly. It doesn't really make much sense. It eventually comes together towards the end, but for a long time, I was just like, this makes no sense. Why would they do this? Why would they do this? Just bear with it. It still isn't a great reason, but there is a reason. The third thing I didn't love as much, I'll call it information gathering. I remember in the first Quiet Place, there were all these like news articles up about like discovering what was going on with these death angels and how to fight them and things like that. It feels like in this movie that was accelerated. Like, I don't know. I remember distinctly seeing like a newspaper article in A Quiet Place talking about like it's sound. Sound is what it is. Well, in this movie, it seems like people figured that out very quickly, as well as another like, other weaknesses and things about these things that I felt like in the original movie, it seemed like it took a long time. So there's just a little bit of a disconnect there. It feels like everyone comes to realizations much quicker in the prequel. It's probably by design. You don't want to have people like waiting around for a month trying to figure out what's going on. That would be a very boring movie, but it did feel a little bit disconnected. And the last thing I didn't love as much, I don't know, I could go either way on this, but it felt like there were a lot of similarities in this movie to the original A Quiet Place. And not just like similarities in themes and things like that. Like scenes were similar, like things that happened were similar. It feels like I don't know if they were drawing inspiration from, trying to like match the formula of, but there were definitely some moments in here that I was like, okay, like that happened in the first movie. And so, you know, it made this film feel, I guess, less original than I would hope. So, all that being said, A Quiet Place Day One comes to theaters on June 28, 2024. Overall, it is still a really good movie. It's still a really good theater experience, despite all the things I didn't like about it. So I think you should check it out in theaters. It is definitely a movie you want to see on a big screen with a great sound system. So check it out when it comes to theaters. And I'm going to go into the ending right now. So if you don't know what happens in this movie, I would turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So Sammy is in hospice care. You don't really find out why. All you know is she's in hospice care. She has this cat that is a pretty cool cat that kind of hangs out with her a lot. She walks on a leash. It is her like constant companion, and she's taking like fentanyl patches. So there's some sort of pain all over her body. She is in hospice care. She doesn't have a ton of time left. And um, one day her like hospice care group, like one of the nurses and some of the other people decide to go into the city for a show. They're outside of New York City. They're going into New York City for a show. Sammy doesn't want to go, but the nurse promises that they'll get pizza in the city, and so she decides that she'll go then. She seems to have a big obsession with pizza. You find out more about that during the movie. Now, they go into the city. The show is like a puppet show. Sammy's not super interested, but the entire group has to leave early because the nurse gets a call that like something is going on. And you kind of get hints of this throughout the movie. You see military vehicles going through the city. At the start, there's like I think 16s flying around New York. So you get a sense that there's something going on. Well, the nurse gets a call that like there is something going on with the military, like something is happening and they have to get out of the city. So they pile back into the bus, try to get out, but as they're getting out, these like asteroids are falling from the sky, and one crash lands like right behind the bus. All of a sudden, there's like debris and smoke and destruction everywhere, and that's just the start of it. Then you start hearing like people screaming and then getting like pulled away. Something is grabbing at them, and so this is the emergence of the like the Death Angels, the listeners, the kind of main antagonists of the Quiet Place. They are just like destruction monsters that can only hear, they can't see. So they seem to just destroy anything that they can hear. I don't know if their goal is to like get rid of all sound. I'm not sure. Like they don't seem to have much of a purpose other than just destruction. But they are here and they are starting to kill everyone. Now, Sammy tries to hide. Eventually, she gets knocked out and wakes up later in the middle of this destruction. Now, she eventually gets back to that theater, that puppet theater that they were at originally. They didn't make it very far when they tried to leave. So she eventually makes it back there, and there is a group of people in there, and they seem to realize what is going on. Like everyone is being very quiet. And again, this was kind of a surprise because I remember distinctly there is an article in like A Quiet Place that says like it's sound. Sound is what is causing it. Maybe that was just like information disbursement. Like maybe the newspaper took a while to get the information, but people like in the cities knew about it. But it did feel weird that all of a sudden, like everyone knows, gotta be quiet. We can't talk. When the Death Angels have been down here for like 2 minutes. And so I guess it's good because it ratchets up the tension, but all of a sudden everyone is being quiet. Everyone is hiding in this theater and they're trying to like not get attention. Now that's tough to do because things happen. Especially this cat. I love this cat, but the cat does cause like one of the initial scenes when it is like running away and it tries to like it like taps on a door. And that is enough sound to like draw a listener over and it attacks. They survive, but it is a big kind of like initial tense scene where you realize just how little sound it takes to kind of draw them in. Now, eventually, that nurse friend that Sammy had, he gets killed in like a heroic way. The power gets shut off to the entire, I guess, block at least. At least the building gets its power shut off, and the emergency generator kicks right back in, and that generator causes a lot of sound. The nurse friend runs out, tries to stop it, eventually shuts the generator off. But as he's leaving the generator, as he's like getting out of there, his shirt rips. And that rip is enough to cause like one of the listeners that is in the area to come and attack him. Now, that's a little surprising because you would think that they would have come anyways because of the generator. Like the generator going should have drawn their attention in. So it was a little surprising that they were already in the area and not already attacking the generator, but it's fine. Now Sammy has to kind of make a choice, and she chooses that she doesn't want to be here anymore. She doesn't want to stay in this area. So she decides that she is going to go. And why is she going to go? Well, she is going to get that pizza that was promised to her, that pizza that was the reason she went to the city. She's going to go get it. And she's going to go to this pizza place called Patsy's in Harlem. Doesn't seem to make much sense, but hey, you know what? That's her goal. Now, we are getting some information from like the military or the government. They are telling people to go to like, I guess, the South Docks, and there are boats there to take people away, to evacuate people from the city, because I guess we've already figured out that the listeners don't like water. And so if people can get to the boats, they can get in the boats, and the boats can evacuate people out of the city. Sammy doesn't want to do that. Sammy wants to go to Harlem to get some pizza. So while most of the people are going south, Sammy decides to go north. Now, she goes north, she runs into some people. One of the scenes, she like goes into a fountain and is like feeding her cat because she's opening this tin of cat food, and she's using the fountain to like cover the sound. And under the fountain, she sees some kids who are hiding in the fountain because the fountain is a constant stream of water, so it's making noise, so it kind of covers up. And again, this was a little too similar, I think, to the first movie. The first movie, they had this waterfall that they would go to where you could like make noise. Again, why didn't they just live at the waterfall? But here you have a fountain that people are hanging out in to make noise. It is different enough, but again, it feels like a very similar type of scene. So she sees these kids, they decide to follow her. Eventually, we see like as they're sneaking through the city, there were some like military announcements on a helicopter telling people to get to the South Docks to get out of the city, and all of the listeners were following these like military helicopters. They're making a lot of noise. Well, after that, for some reason, all these people decide to start walking. It's like a procession, like a caravan almost of people going down the docks, and they are walking. Don't seem to be too afraid of the sound. There are some loudish individuals, and you're like, this is weird. Like, why are these people so brazen to do this? Well, Sammy tells the kids to go with him, and then she just keeps going north. But unfortunately, a large group of people making noise draws the attention of the listeners, and eventually the listeners just attack them because they're making a ton of noise in the city. I guess maybe the helicopters are supposed to draw the listeners away, and so people thought they were safe. They weren't safe. These people start getting attacked. Sammy runs. She is separated from the cat, and the cat runs over to like a subway station, and there someone emerges from the water, this person named Eric, and he sees the cat and follows the cat. The cat leads him to Sammy. So now we have Eric, our other main character. Eric was a law student. His parents are in England. He doesn't really know what to do. He seems a little bit kind of distraught. So he decides to like follow Sammy, even though she's going the wrong direction, even though she's going to get pizza. He decides to follow her anyways. Now they make their way further along, and eventually it starts to rain. And the rain is good because it's sound that masks all their other movements. And eventually they decide to get out of the rain. I was like, why would you get out of the rain? Keep going. Just keep walking. You can make good distance because the rain is masking all your sound. You can get up to wherever it is you want to go, get your pizza, and then evacuate. They decide not to. They decide to go to Sammy's apartment. Sammy gets them in there. They, they sleep there. They recover. And during this time, there are lightning, there's thunder and lightning. It is a thunderstorm. And so when the thunder happens, they scream and like let out their rage. And again, this felt like something that was very similar to the first movie with that waterfall scene. I guess it's different enough, but it still felt like a similar scene where you're like letting out your rage, letting out your frustration masked by the sound. So they sleep there. They kind of like, talk a little bit because they can with the rain. They like become better. They become like better friends. You're like, okay, this is sweet. Now Sammy has a friend. Well, she's a little ice cold because the next morning she decides to leave anyways. Now I think she just doesn't want Eric to follow her because she doesn't really think about being saved. She has her quest. She has a terminal disease, and so she just like wants to do this as like a last hurrah, I think. So she leaves, but Eric eventually follows her. Eric follows her. He brings her her poetry book. Sammy is a poet, we find out. And so she was writing some poetry, and Eric brings it to her and, like, reunites with her. And it's sweet. Like, Sammy tried to leave him. Eric is still following like a lost puppy, but he is like a sweet lost puppy. Now, while they're like getting ready to keep going, Sammy accidentally knocks over some books. She was reading some books in the quiet of the city. She accidentally knocks them over. That causes the listeners to find them. They run. It is an intense scene that involves like a water escape. Now, eventually, they do make it to Harlem. There is a church that they go to. Eric goes on a quest to get Sammy some meds because she is in pain. She needs more painkillers for her terminal disease. He goes to a pharmacy to get meds. On the way back, he comes and sees like this construction site that seems to be like where the listeners are hatching new listeners. There's all these like pods in there. And I thought they were eggs, but a listener at one point opens it and it is filled with like this, I don't know, like cotton candy looking stuff, and they all eat it. So I thought it was eggs. Maybe they are growing the food that the listeners need to eat. I'm not sure. I think it's still eggs. Maybe that was just an egg that didn't hatch, and so they ate it anyways. I don't really know. But in any event, Eric gets the meds for Sammy, and then they keep going. Eventually, they do make it to Harlem. They do make it to this pizza place, and you find out why, like, Sammy is so stuck on this pizza place. You find out that her dad had a disease that killed him, but he was a jazz pianist before that. He would take Sammy to like I guess this place called Patsy's Pizza, play jazz, and then after they would get pizza. So she has this really great memory of it, and so that's why she wants to go to Patsy's Pizza while the world's ending, while like her disease is still manageable. She wants to like get up there. So eventually they make it. They get up there, but Patsy's is like burned down, is destroyed. There's no pizza there. Sammy's really upset. They go to like a nearby bar to just like hang out and regroup. And while they're there, Eric goes and like finds another pizzeria, and he grabs a box of their pizza, brings it over to Sammy, writes Patsy's on it. It's a very sweet gesture, gives it to her, and like, shows her that he has Patsy, gets her the pizza that she's wanted. They eat the pizza. It is like 3-day old pizza. It probably doesn't taste very good, but they seem to enjoy it. They seem to like eat it. And then you see like their friendship progress. Eric is trying to cheer her up, and he like does magic tricks for her. It's an odd scene. It's cute. And Eric is just like a double threat, like a lawyer and a magician. Like, he can't be stopped. He is so, so talented. Well, after they do this, after they have this like fun scene, they head up to the roof and see that they are right by the river, and there is one of the boats, one of the like evacuation boats is going by. And Sammy basically tells Eric like he's got to get on a boat. So they head down. Sammy gives him her yellow coat that she was wearing. She is already wearing Eric's coat to like keep her warm. So they decide that they should get on that boat. So they head over, and unfortunately, that boat is making sound, drawing the listeners. So they are about to go over there, and the listeners all start like coming towards that boat. Sammy and Eric hide behind like a car, and Eric has anxiety like throughout this movie, and so it kind of hits here. He gets a little scared, he gets a little overwhelmed, and so Sammy gives him her cat to hold on to like help him with anxiety. And then she like basically says like, you've got to get on that boat, tells him to run, and that is when Sammy picks up like crowbar and starts smashing car windows, making a racket, like running away, drawing all the listeners. So the listeners all follow her, and that gives Eric the opportunity to run. And again, similar to what happened in A Quiet Place Part 1, where the main character like yelled to draw the attention of the listeners so that his family could escape. Here, Sammy is drawing the attention of the listeners so that Eric and her cat can escape. Eric and her cat run. They make it a pretty far way, but then Eric like hits a can or something, and that draws listeners to him. He's running, he's trying to make it to the dock. They're getting really close, and as they almost get him, he jumps off the dock and into the water. He's safe. He swims to this boat. He gets rescued. He is now one of the survivors on this boat, and Sammy is still on the island with these listeners. She's able to escape though. Like they are, I guess, too drawn to the various cars, and then they are eventually drawn to Eric's sound, so she is able to escape. Now, when Eric's on the boat, he finds a note in his pocket, in Sammy's like coat pocket, that is a note to him about like thanking him for helping her to like get to her destination and like hear the beautiful music of the city. And you see her listening to like an iPod that is attached to a like boombox speaker. And so she's listening to this music as she's walking around the city. She's enjoying like the peaceful New York City with her music. And as she's walking through, she eventually unplugs the headphones. So all of a sudden now the speakers are blaring music, and she is just having like one last moment. I think, she basically knows that there's nothing else she can do. She is alone on this island. She has an illness that is terminal. She helped her friend, her cat, get to the ship, and so there's really like nothing left for her here. I imagine food will probably get tough to find. I imagine, her pain is getting tough to manage. She pulls out that headphone jack. The speakers start playing her music, and that is when the listeners come towards her, and that's the movie. That is A Quiet Place Day One. Like I said, I think you should watch it. It is a good movie experience. It is a good prequel to this series. So definitely check it out when it comes to theaters on June 28th, 2024. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.